Hello, my name is Conrad from Greenhouse Learning, and this is just going to be a little series on how to teach GCSE English from the AQA exam board. So, this series is going to go over just kind of all the skills that you're going to need as a tutor, going over that it's not really as scary as it seems, because I think a lot of people think that, you've got to know a lot of English and be really into it to be able to teach it. There's only a few basic things that you need a good understanding of to go into teach it to teach effective lessons. It's mainly about your skills as a tutor in any subject. And, if you work for Greenhouse Learning, then obviously you're an amazing tutor. So you will be able to teach the subject. And we're going to go over the whole syllabus general and what each question is asking. We're not really going to look at content and go over all of that. You can do that in your own time if you've got it. If you have a GCSE English job, we're mainly going to be going over what the questions are asking, how students are meant to be answering them, the different styles of exams, the different questions that they have, just so you are fully aware of everything that you're getting yourself into. And, you can then relay that information to students, because lots of students that I teach don't really know how the exams work until, you know, later on when the exams are close up. I always think it's a good idea to get them knowing what they're meant to be doing as soon as possible so that they can start working towards it. There's no point in knowing all the questions, all the answers to all the questions if you don't know how to answer the questions in the first place. So this first video is just going to be quite a short one, and it's just going to be going over your skills as a tutor, the skills that are needed, and what and how to teach these lessons. So your job as a tutor, is to be able to give the students the skills that they need to work independently. I think, I get onto this later, but as there's quite limited time in the sessions, you don't want to be spending all that time teaching them stuff that then they don't know how to do themselves. So you need to be making sure that your lessons are focusing on things that then they are able to take into their own time and then do. Okay, we're offline, but I don't think that matters for the recording. So we need to focus on the writing skills and structure over content, because most of your students will be in full-time education and they will be learning that content in class. Obviously, you can teach content if they're really struggling with some things, but the most important thing is that they're learning how to answer the questions, because that is most of the marks. They need to know how to use that content effectively in their essays. And then try your best to follow what they're learning in class. If you can't really get in contact with the school and you can get a lot of information off them, just talk to the student and try and keep similar lines to what they're learning in schools. Obviously, if you feel what the school is teaching could be done more effectively, then that's up to you. But generally, don't try and give them contrasting information or contrasting ways to answer questions. If the school says to do something, say, yeah, go with your school, unless you know that that's not good information. Okay, the skills that are needed. So students will need to be able to analyze different writing moods, themes, and motives. So they need to be able to look at a piece of text and they need to, understand that the feeling's being created, what theme is being used, know the different themes in the books, and how the writer is trying to make the reader feel. And then expanding onto that they need to understand how the writer has done that using different techniques. So there's lots of different writing techniques that they will learn about, and they just need to be able to place them in context of the question that they've been given. These are based around the AOs, and we'll go into some of them later videos, but these are just general overviews on what they are. So then they need to have a deep understanding of different writings and understand the context in which they were written. So they have to learn 3 different pieces of writing along with about 20 short poems. So it seems like a lot. The poems, they don't need deep understanding of those, they need knowledge of them, but they don't need to go as hard as they do with the books. So they have 3 different pieces of writing, and the context in which they were written is really important, because that's also one of the areas that they need to hit. They need to understand the time it was written and why that affects the writing. So they need to be able to write clear and accurate essays. So this is also an AO. They will get marked on spelling, punctuation, and grammar for a lot of questions expected in the language. And also they get marked on how cohesive and how well structured and written and planned their essays are as well. So even if they've got all the best content in the world, if they're not writing it well, then they won't get as well as marked as good. And that is something that I find a lot of students struggle with. It's the sitting down and it's like, well, how do I answer this? So I'd say as a tutor, that's the thing you need to be focusing on the most. And then this is more for language. Be able to use different writing techniques in creative and persuasive writing. So they will have a question on creative writing and they'll have a question on persuasive writing. And they need to be able to show that they can implement the techniques that they've learned in their own writings as well as analysing it in other people's. And then being able to compare and contrast different writings as well. So you need to look at two different pieces of text that are talking about similar things and, understand what's different about it, what's similar about it. You never say which one's better or worse. It's not about that. It is about being able to identify why the writers might have written different things, what techniques they've used to make it different, and even though it is different, what is also similar about the text. So if you ever have to compare texts, there will always be similarities and there'll always be differences. They won't give you two wildly different texts. They'll be on the same things or have similar themes. And how to teach this. So usually if you're teaching anything as a tutor, you'll only get about 1 hour a week. So you need to be able to understand how to get the most out of that 1 hour. So that's why I always think as a tutor, especially in subjects like this, don't really focus on content. That's what there are revisions for. If you think about it, they spend 4 hours at a time revising when it's exam periods. How come you're expected to teach an hour of content? They won't be able to get that far. They can do that in your own time. That's not what you're there for. You're there to teach them how to answer the questions, how to structure their essays, also how to revise, what to revise for. You're there to give them the skills to then do that on their own. So a really good way of that is just using lots of past papers to get them ready. I find students, they might not like it, but it's a good way to go through past papers with them. Now, this is different than content because you can talk them through how to answer it. You talk them through like what they've done right, what they've done wrong, and you look at it with them. It's not going over content. And also with past papers, the more they practice them, the more they get used to them, it makes the exams less nerve-wracking. And also time management is a massive thing. And if they practice that enough, then, when they get into the exam, it'll be a lot easier. And then, like we said, structuring the essays, time management, what each question is asking, what it needs to include. That's a really important thing that not a lot of students know how to do because, each question has a different mark scheme. The question's asking for different things, but it doesn't explicitly say what it is asking for. So you need to make sure that the student is fully aware of what information to get down and what information not to include, because sometimes, it'll be asking you to do one thing, and that's the only thing they want you to talk about, nothing else. So if they're talking about something else, they won't get marked on it, or they'll lose marks for it in some cases. And, just general study and exam tips. So I would say, obviously it is person to person. If you have a student who does not go to school and you've got them for a long time a week, then teach them content because they're going to need it. But if you've just got 1 hour a week of a student who, is still going to English lessons and, still getting that content, they still revise, then, you can use them as refresher sessions to be like, so what have you learnt about? And they can tell you, and that's a good way of revising. But don't sit down for an hour and explain Lord of the Flies to them. Maybe you can go over some tricky hidden themes in the books and really delve into some of the stuff that they may not know, but don't just recite books. That's a really important thing. Okay, so in the next video, we are going to be going over how each of the exams look and what they'll be facing, and then we'll go into more detail about each of those exams. But I hope that you found this useful, and I'll see you in the next one.